Hi and welcome to this session with HRD. Today we'll be talking about financial well-being and some of the things that the employer can do to help transform the employee's experience with the business and have better financial security in the future. The pandemic has caused enormous issues with certain sectors, particularly in hospitality, in entertainment, in travel, and this has forced us all to think about workplace stress and what we can do about it from an employer perspective. At no time in the past has the employer had such an important role in thinking about well-being in the workplace. So today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Asesh Sarkar, the CEO of Salary Finance, and Bernie Hickman, the CEO of the insurance business at L&G, to talk about the innovations that they've been working on during this last year to help combat workplace stress and promote good mental health. So great to have you here this morning. So I wanted to just start by talking to you about what are the top well-being challenges that you've seen in organisations over the last year and what you've been doing about them. Should we start with you, Benny?
Sure, and I mean it is all the preoccupation of COVID and how you help people through COVID. Obviously now we're starting to think about beyond COVID and helping people back into the workplace and what we need to do that. And it's all about well-being. That's we've never put as much focus on it as an organisation, and looking at all aspects: physical well-being, mental well-being, financial well-being. It's all really been a big focus. Recognising everyone's got individual situations. It's never been as apparent and as clear, and making sure that we can be flexible and tailor what we're offering as an employer and as supporting our employees to each individual's situation. So they're the kind of big challenges we're facing. How do we do that? And yeah, we haven't got loads more money to spend, so how do we do that without spending any more money is the aim, but sometimes a little bit more money. You know, what are all the things we can do, and how do we join up all the things that we do already and make them more impactful for our employees? They've been the big themes for us.
And building on that, I think previously work was somewhat separate to life, and so you come to work and then you leave work and then you have your home life. And I guess people considered well-being more in the context of their home life, whereas actually COVID, where most people have been at home, has kind of conflated or merged the two. And so actually well-being was important. It's just completely paramount now. And so the distance between work and kind of home life is just no longer there. And so well-being is very much in the focus. Increasingly, we see it as a real differentiator for employers. And as Bernie says, employers are already facing kind of many cost pressures. There's already kind of talks of, particularly in hospitality and other sectors, people finding it hard to find people. And then when you add in a well-being focus, which can sometimes cost, not always, then that certainly adds to the pressure. And I guess interestingly, well-being, we kind of see two parts to it. The kind of the rational and the emotional. The kind of rational is people need practical things to help their well-being. Other things are sometimes a bit more kind of gimmicky, but again, it kind of helps them feel motivated and so on. And so just trying to appeal to those types of things. But what well-being is certainly we see front and center to the future of work. And those that don't focus on it will kind of really struggle with the competitive environment that we have.
A lot of us are reflecting as leaders on the last year, thinking about what do we want to take forward. We've all learned a lot of things that actually didn't work. I wondered, are there some things at L&G from a well-being perspective that haven't worked well and that you're very cognizant of in terms of well-being going forward?
I mean, I think there's always a communication challenge, and I think so we've been communicating a lot, and there is a sort of, you can't over-communicate, but we've found that at some points, if you just keep doing the same methods, the same old way, it can just lose pretty much all impact, and you may as well not be doing it. So I think, there have been times when we might have been over-communicating and people have just started to tune out. And so we've had to sort of rein back in and challenging ourselves to think of different ways of communicating and engaging with people to keep it fresh and relevant, because it's never been more important to be communicating and engaging with people. So on the whole, though, we've tried lots of things, and there's lots of things that we're going to take forward and keep doing. The things that haven't worked is because we haven't been able to. We haven't been able to have people together to collaborate. Not all the online collaboration works very well, but that's more forced on us rather than by design. I think I think some of the experience of the last 18 months is how important face-to-face, in-person contact is for specific things, which are not a surprise. Solving tough problems that go across multiple teams is more difficult to do remotely. Getting the best out of people who don't feel comfortable speaking up is difficult to do remotely. So I think some of what we've learned is what we kind of knew already, that we really need to get people back into the office for particularly some activities that really benefit from people being together, building relationships.
So as a leader, your hunch is always to trust your instincts, and the reality is you only have a few people around, or you have a subset of the organization around you, and those influences can outweigh your kind of thinking. And so, quite often we've introduced policies, and so we had X number of days working from home, and it was a blanket policy. Whereas actually what we realized is, as you go through the organization, like I say, it's just very individual. So we've really moved away from a single policy, even where there's flexibility, to actually doing things on a team level, empowering the leadership team more, empowering managers more. We've done lots of people training or manager training as well.
Okay.
Something called legitimate leadership, which has been really, really helpful about really understanding your people, enabling them. And so most of the initiatives we now do, there might be a principle at the top level, but it's kind of implemented a lot more locally with a lot more flexibility, coupled with, we do regular surveys, quite often with the same questions to help us how we're progressing, but also just on particular topics. And so flexible working, for example, we did a lot of surveys, and we just find the team now really, because they see we change, when we hear feedback, they're much more open to kind of giving it constructively. And so just had lots more listening as well.
Is there anything that's worked well over this last year in terms of communicating in a remote way that's allowed you to be more human, and building on your point about actually just saying to somebody, how are you? Let's just stop before we rush on to the to-do list for today, but how are you? Tell me what's going on. Are there things that have worked well for you?
Well, I think one, in our, we've done virtual global town halls, as I'm sure all kind of global companies have done, which, we tend to do them in person more locally before. And so that's been a good thing, and the virtual has enabled that. But one of the things, coming to your question, that has worked well for us is usually our town halls would be senior, top down, here's what's going on, here's where we're going. We've mixed it up a bit with a whole range of people with more personal stories about how it's been for them. And we've been finding that's what's been resonating the most, and it is the most powerful. Certainly, one particularly memorable, well, we've had several memorable times like that where, we obviously as a life insurance company, we have been sadly having more of our customers pass away. And so we've had some of our frontline claims handlers talking about what it's been like to work through the pandemic, and it's just was really moving, and you just really appreciate them much more for what they do and the amazing job that they do, and actually we as a company, what our purpose is and what good things that we can do. And it's both more humanizing, and it really, you got more empathy for customers, for your colleagues, but also just a greater sense of pride about what we're doing and the great things that we're doing. So I think those frontline kind of stories have worked, and accounts have really worked well.
It's just incredibly heartwarming to see, people going out of their way to thank people, to recognise them, and I think that just kind of creates and doing it quite publicly, and it just creates a nice culture of appreciating what people do. And like Bernie says, it doesn't have to be kind of top down. It's almost nicer when it's just kind of organic. But everyone works hard, everyone has their stresses, and it's just kind of nice to be kind of recognised and thanked for it as well. Which again can be more hard if it is quite transactional day to day.
Could you help us to unpack what's been happening here from an individual's perspective, where the pandemic has caused this focus on financial well-being, and then we'll go on to talk a bit about the employer's role and why is it so important for the employer to be right at the forefront of helping people through that thinking.
The pandemic has been a very acute time for those with low financial resilience, which is 60% of the UK kind of UK population, and so what that means is if you had no savings, I think it's like the latest stat is that 40% of people in the UK have less than £100 of savings. Then, if you had an income shock during COVID, then actually you had nothing to fall to fall back on. And perhaps your job was okay, but maybe a member of your household, maybe your partner's job wasn't there, and so kind of many households faced some income shock combined with no savings, and so that was a challenge. For others, they might then just go out and get more work, but clearly in COVID that wasn't possible. Then it comes to debt. If you have debts, then there's clearly the cost of servicing it. But again, if you don't have any savings, your income's less, and you need to take on more. If you're unable to kind of get it at a low price, there's a challenge there. One of the things COVID did is really make people realize that no one is resilient. A lot of people are into their fitness, eat well, think you're really healthy, you're young. But the reality is it made everyone realize that there are people dying en masse. There are people getting really, really ill who thought they were quite healthy before. And then so when you look at life kind of life cover, when you talk about income protection or you call it critical illness care, all of these things a lot of people had never really thought about up until you were in the eye of the storm and thinking, wow, what happens? Lots of people thinking, what happens if I'm made redundant? What will I do? What happens if I get COVID and I can't work? Like, where does the income come from? So suddenly I think what COVID did is really where people were just about financially vulnerable but were kind of coping, and if something happened they would make it work somehow or another. COVID really took out all of those things for a very long period, and I think it's really made people think that unless you have savings, unless you have the ability to borrow if you need it at reasonable rates, unless you have protection, unless you're investing in your future, you just cannot, it doesn't matter if you're young, healthy, whatever, you just cannot bank any of those things, and you just need a level of resilience. And what my hope is as we come out of this, people don't automatically forget, people don't automatically think they're invincible. This is something we're going to do a different day. But we start to think about savings, we start to make sure that we have good ways in which we manage debt, we start to think about protection, because it's the only way, if another pandemic comes, which what's to say it's not, then actually people are better prepared next time. And then I guess the other thing it did, of course, is just highlight the inequality gap. But there were of course kind of many people that did better, but for the vast majority, it's been a real challenge.
And Asesh, this role of the employer around supporting their people with financial well-being, I suppose in the past we've associated our workplace with pensions primarily, from directors from the government. What's your perspective on the employer's role in supporting teams and to help them learn and think through what they should be doing? Isn't it something that they should just be doing by themselves?
It's a good question. So I think linking to what we were talking about before around the merging of work life and kind of home life, with that comes well-being, with that comes financial well-being. And so I think we no longer live in a world where you come to work, you do your job, you get paid, and then you go home, and then you worry about your finances, and you kind of make it work. And so the kind of two things are coming kind of very much together. The reality is the UK, as in many kind of parts of the world, is there's very poor levels of financial education for the young. Most people are not good at managing their money, and so they are certainly not good role models or ability to teach their children. And for many people, they live with the inability to make mistakes. So when you make mistakes, it's very hard to recover from them. So you get into this end of cycle. So the reality is for a significant majority that actually they're very financially fragile, and that impacts their work as well. So it's an unhappy situation for everyone. And actually solving that is really, really difficult. And certainly our view is you can't look to government to solve everything. Government has a role, but actually there are other ways to do things. The workplace is incredibly valuable because when you're at work, you spend a lot of time at work. If communications are delivered in the right way, you engage with it, and so there's an opportunity to engage people in these topics. The workplace is also really interesting because you have two things. One is you have group purchasing power, so you can offer better value products because of the power of your organization. And then you also have something which is very valuable, which is payroll deduction. And so if you can, get a benefit through work, that's a better rate, and it comes out of your salary, let's say it's income protection, whatever it might be, then that's quite an easy chain, as opposed to yourself having to suddenly prioritize it, work out what it is, how to get it for, and send a payment. So the workplace is a very good channel to do that through, and it's very, very trusted as well. And then the benefits for the employers as well, because clearly if you're financially less stressed, if you're financially healthy, protection, for example, really helps you mentally as well. If you know that if something happens, I'm going to be supported, you're feeling mentally pretty good. If you know, if I don't earn for a month, I don't know how I'm going to feed my children, you're going to be mentally stressed. So it kind of feels like it's certainly a win for the employee, it's a win for the employer, and it's a kind of win for society in general.
Yeah, and I agree. The employer has got an important role to play. I guess the other angle to it as well is most employers do provide some form of benefit, but how many of their employees realise that they've got it, one, and two, how much the employer is actually paying already. And so I think, one of the big advantages of Protect is inherently more engaging because you can personalise it and it is done digitally. And so a big part of the thinking is actually getting much more value out of the money you're already spending. You don't have to pay any more as an employer, but you get a inherently more engaging offering to really go to your employees and say, hey, you've got these fantastic benefits and have a look how much we're paying for you already. And did you know, because as Asesh saying, on a group buying basis, we can arrange stuff that is much better value than anything you can get retail or in any other channels. So it is a win-win-win all the way around.
Productivity in the UK has been stagnant for many, many years. I think we're the first generation that hasn't managed to transform workplace productivity. Do you see an opportunity, just touching on one of the points that you made before, Asesh, do you see an opportunity with this stronger role that the employer plays with the employees' livelihoods to transform engagement and also therefore to drive productivity, which has not just workplace benefits but societal benefits as well?
We do think the way to unlocking productivity is people that are just much more well, much more engaged, much more less stress, and then the natural byproduct of that is productivity.
What's been roughly the difference between, say, a traditional flexible benefit scheme that you may have offered in the past and Protect in terms of engagement? Have you seen more take up for Protect, or have you seen the same as other schemes that you would have offered in the past?
I mean, certainly on the experience so far, it's been much more engaging, and people have been logging on partly because it's so easy to do, and it doesn't take long. It's instantaneous. It's not difficult. It's a really great journey. Encourage everyone to seek us out for a demo to really bring it to life for you. It has achieved that engagement that we were looking to achieve, really, and the performance has been much stronger than we would normally expect to see.
Thanks so much. A big thank you to Bernie Hickman, who leads the insurance business at Legal & General. A big thank you to Asesh Sarkar, who is the CEO of Salary Finance. If you'd like to talk more and hear more with other leaders across the HR space, please come to hrdconnect.com to continue this conversation, and thanks so much for listening.